Thanks for having yours out, so it reminded me.
Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Lincoln-Lancaster County Planning Commission of August 7th, 2024. A printed agenda is available outside the hearing room, and a copy of the full agenda, including the staff reports, are available online or at the Planning Department, room 213. The Open Meetings Act is posted just inside the doors at the back of the room. Out of courtesy for those attending this meeting, commissioners and staff, cell phones may not be used in the chamber during any portion of this meeting. We appreciate your cooperation. Please note, the Planning Commission action today is final on the following item: 1.2, County Special Permit 24024. Any aggrieved person may appeal final action of the Planning Commission to the City Council or the County Board by filing a notice of appeal with the clerk within 14 days following the action of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission action on all of today's items is a recommendation to the City Council or the County Board. The first item of business is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held July 24th, 2024. Is there a motion?
So moved, Campbell.
Second, Joy.
Campbell,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Joy,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Abstain.
Minutes approved.
We will now proceed with today's agenda. There are no items on the consent agenda today, so we will now proceed to public hearings. Prior to the staff making a brief presentation, each staff person should state their name, agency, and address. The applicant will then be requested to present his or her testimony, followed by those who wish to testify in support, and then followed by those who wish to testify in opposition. The staff will then be given an opportunity to respond to the testimony, and then the applicant shall have an opportunity for rebuttal. Every person testifying should state their name and address and shall have 5 minutes to speak unless additional time is requested and granted. The clerk will use the light system to help aid your timing for your testimony. Lights will appear on the monitors provided. The green light indicates the start time for testimony. The yellow light represents 1 minute remaining, and the red light indicates that your 5 minutes has expired, and the clerk will indicate that your time is up. If during your testimony you have copies of documents or materials you would like distributed to the Planning Commission members and or included as a part of the record, please provide them to the clerk. The Planning Commission will vote immediately at the close of the public hearing unless the Commission votes to defer action or continue the public hearing. Shelley, please call the first public hearing item.
Yes, item 4.1, text amendment 24011, an amendment to Lincoln Municipal Code section 27.59.060 to expand the ability to obtain blanket height permits on areas within the airport hazard area that have an elevation of more than 100 feet but not more than 115 feet above the elevation on the nearest existing or proposed runway in residential areas, and to modify when post-construction certification is required. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on this application?
No.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information about visiting any of this site to be disclosed?
Nope.
Emma Martin, planner, 555 South 10th Street. This is a request to amend the Lincoln Municipal Code, specifically section 27.59.060 of the airport zoning regulations, to allow a blanket height permit over the properties in the shaded area of the airport zoning map when the properties meet the proposed conditions. It also clarifies when post-construction certification is required after a blanket height permit. This amendment was submitted after several meetings and drafts regarding the rules and regulations surrounding blanket height permits within the shaded area and post-construction certification. And all discussions did involve the Lincoln Airport Authority. And as this is a complicated topic, I will first go over the current airport zoning requirements and what the requirements a property must meet to receive a blanket height permit first. And after that, I'll go over what is proposed in the text amendment. This presentation will also take a bit longer than the normal 5 minutes due to the explanation required. So first, some definitions. The shaded area is defined by the Lincoln Municipal Code as areas, as areas on the Lincoln Airport Zoning District map, representing areas within 4 miles from the end of runway of a runway having elevations that are 75 feet or more above the elevation of the nearest runway. And these are on this map, if I can get it. There we go. These shaded areas here. And a blanket height permit is a height permit that may include all of the area and proposed structures within a development that is zoned residentially and has an elevation of not more than 100 feet above the elevation on the nearest existing or proposed runway end. Now, a runway end is what it sounds like. It is the end of a runway. You can see them noted here by the X or the circles. There we go. And whatever the elevation at that runway end is, that is the elevation that we will be speaking to. Currently in the airport turning zones, which is the areas in yellow, no structure can be built if it is higher than 150 feet above the elevation at the closest runway end. Shaded areas are generally in that airport turning zone, and as stated previously, have elevations that are 75 feet or more above the elevation at that runway end. Currently, blanket height permits are only allowed for developments that have an elevation of not more than 100 feet above the elevation of the nearest runway end. This may include portions of the shaded area, but only if the property meets the following criteria. It is located within a plan, such as a community unit plan, or a CUP, or a planned unit development, or a PUD, where the maximum permitted height is 35 feet or less, or as previously mentioned, the elevation of the land is not more than 100 feet above that runway end. The requirement to not exceed 100 feet of elevation above the nearest runway end is due to that 150-foot elevation limit. If a structure is built and is 35 feet in height, on property that is 100 feet above the elevation of the runway end, the elevation of that structure will be 135 feet above the nearest runway, providing a cushion of approximately 15 feet between the structure and the restricted Federal Aviation Administration, or FAA, airspace. Now, so that's the basics of what is currently in the zoning municipal code. Moving on to the proposal, Aspen Builders, Inc. proposed a discussion in regards to an amendment to the blanket height permit text in March of 2024. They were interested in applying for a blanket height permit for some of their properties that are within the shaded area, but are 100 feet above the elevation of the nearest runway end. That is, of course, disallowed. That, of course, disallowed a blanket height permit. The amendment was proposed to allow a blanket height permit for properties and structures in the shaded area, reasoning that the cost of multiple individual height permits, along with the required post-construction certification, is expensive, tedious, and would increase the end cost for the home buyer. And for a two-story home, the extensive review process didn't seem to provide any additional level of protection for aircraft in the area. The discussion focused solely on single, family, attached, and detached housing, and any taller buildings or structures are not included in the proposal and will continue to go through the more intensive process, height permit process. The possibility of the text amendment was discussed with Building and Safety, the City Attorney's Office, and the Lincoln Airport Authority, and it was generally agreed that a text amendment would not have a negative impact on the City of Lincoln airspace as long as it was clear, specific, and protected restricted airspace. The submitted amendment proposes that blanket height permits be allowed when properties have an elevation that is more than 100 feet, but no more than 115 feet above the elevation of the nearest runway end. This new restriction will still allow two-story homes to be built as long as the properties meet the following conditions. They must be residentially zoned, have a ground elevation of more than 100 feet, but no more than 115, and are subject to a CUP or PUD that limits the height of all dwellings within said area to not more than 25 feet from the top of the dwelling foundation to the highest point on the building. The amendment also clarifies when post-construction certification is required for a building, And with that, it also will amend the text to say that post-construction certification is not required for structures that meet the new restrictions. The limit of more than 100 feet but no more than 115 feet is again due to that 150-foot elevation limit discussed previously. This elevation limit, combined with the requirement that dwellings are not more than 25 feet at the highest point, will ensure that structures remain below the 150-foot elevation limit. For example, if a structure is 25 feet tall and is at an elevation of 100 feet above the runway elevation, the structure will be 125 feet above that elevation. If a structure is 25 feet but at 115 feet elevation, the structure will be 140 feet above the elevation of the runway. Both the minimum and maximum elevation of this text amendment will be at least 10 feet below that 150-foot restriction and provide a cushion to ensure that even if there's small discrepancies in elevation, if there's additions to the top of the building that were not disclosed, nothing will project into FAA airspace. And to hopefully illustrate that a little better, so you can see here that if a building is 25 feet from the top of the foundation to the highest point of the building, excuse me, the dwelling can, and it is at an elevation of 1,280 feet, but the runway elevation is 1,175 feet. That is 105 feet above the nearest runway, so that is within that 100-foot to 115-foot limit. And the 1,280 feet plus the 25 feet is 1,305 feet in elevation, which is less than 1,325 feet, which is the absolute limit of the 150-foot restriction for a runway that ends in an elevation of 1,175 feet. So this amendment does not change what can and cannot be built in the shaded area. Buildings and structures were already allowed in the shaded area, and this amendment does not permit construction where none was previously allowed. Instead, it will help streamline the height and building permit process by reducing time and cost involved with applying for the multiple height permits and reduce the time and effort required for post-construction certification. And it will provide a minor reduction in the final cost to the home buyer or renter. The Lincoln Airport Authority reviewed the amendment and has not opposed to the change in the text. And finally, the amendment is compatible with the 2050 Comprehensive Plan. It helps Lincoln and Lancaster County meet a variety of goals and policies, including safe and affordable housing and streamlining the zoning and building permitting processes. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Do we have testimony from the applicant?
Good afternoon, Danae Kalkowski, Seacrest and Kalkowski Law Firm, 1128 Lincoln Mall, Suite 105. Here on behalf of the applicant for the text amendment, 1640 LLC and PAR 72. Principals are Bob and Michelle Benish, and they own the lots that are in Hub Hall Heights 15th edition, and that's kind of the property that has brought all of this to the forefront, right? So Emma did the hard part, which was kind of set the table, because this is the text amendment, you know, is a bit confusing, but I think I'm going to just give the generality and kind of explain why and the impact that it'll have, right, on Hub Hall Heights 15th. So you can see an example of what we're trying to do here. But the text amendment we have before you today, I think, is a really good example of the city staff, airport authority, developer, all working together cooperatively to find a way to make just a small regulatory adjustment that will reduce costs for home builders and help keep housing more affordable. A small piece, but we know we have to keep working at these small pieces, right, for the overall whole. So while the language of the amendment might seem a little complicated, it really boils down to finding a way to allow residentially zoned property within the shaded area to be able to utilize a blanket height permit. When we use the blanket height permit, the engineer can go in, certify the elevation of the ground, one permit, multiple lots, done, right? So this allows us to use that blanket height permit. And then the second component of it is we not be required to do a post-construction certification for each lot. By putting in place these certain protections, the 25-foot restriction, which all of our house plans that Bob has for this area will easily fit within that 25 feet. By putting some of these things in place, we're assuring that we still have even a little bit, of extra room at the top to make sure we're not getting within that 150-foot area. We're not violating that. So we've added those specific types of protections. And we spent a lot of time talking through this with Building and Safety, Airport Authority, everybody, to make sure we had those clearly defined and easy to follow. And they'll be very clearly defined in the CUP, for example, for Hub Hall Heights. By not having to do that post-construction certification, that would have required lot by lot, you to bring a surveyor out, them to do a survey, shoot the elevation of the house, etc. So without having to do that, we figure it's probably a cost savings between the blanket height permit and no post-construction certification of about $700 to $800 per lot. So we've made this small adjustment which allows us to have larger areas that can utilize the blanket height permit. And I was going to show you, I haven't used this yet. So this is Hub Hall Heights 15th edition. We have 77 lots. So currently what I have outlined in blue are the areas that would be subject to the restrictions, right? That's area that would have an elevation over 75 feet, right? We got a little bit of area that we actually have 13 lots where we don't have to do anything because the elevation's 75 feet or less. The area in pink, which is hard for you to see, but right in here, 28 lots. Under the current zoning, that has an elevation of 100 feet or less, right? So we can come in, we're residentially zoned, 35-foot height limit in a residential zone. We can come in, we can get the blanket height permit, build, and not have any post-construction certification. So that's the existing. So the lots we're talking about that will be impacted by this amendment are these lots. Another 36 lots, okay? So the ground elevation there is over 100 feet, but not more than 115 feet. In fact, most of it's less than 110, but we have 3 lots between 110 and 150. So this is the area that, with this text amendment, allows us to do a blanket height permit. So they'll certify the grounds between 100 and 115 from the nearest runway. And then we will limit under the CUP the height to 25 feet or less. Only applies to single family or 2-family homes. And when we do all of that, then we're not required to do the post-construction certification. So basically it allows us to have a little more streamlined process for those 36 lots and not have to add that additional cost. But still puts the protections in place so the community, the airport authority is still protected that the dwellings that will be built out here will not exceed the requirement that's set in place to protect the airport authority. And I think I'll leave it at that. I think that's kind of the overview. Emma did a good job of kind of what is and what we're changing to, but that's really the gist of the text amendment. And it's, I just appreciate being able to come in, work with staff. When we find a problem, we say, isn't there just a little bit more we can squeeze out of that and still provide the protection the community needs? We can't always do it, but in this case we could, and we could put some protections in place that would allow it to happen. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any. If they're really technical, we're going to bring Emma back up. She's got the numbers down.
Any questions for today? No. All right. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
All right, at this time, we will hear testimony in support of this application. Is there anyone here who would like to testify in support? If not, is there anyone here who would like to testify in a neutral capacity or in opposition to this application? Okay. Anyone have any staff questions?
No.
Okay, no need for applicant rebuttal then? All right,
I would move that we close the public hearing.
Second, Joy.
Campbell,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Joy,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
yes.
Public hearing closed.
And I would move that we approve text amendment 24011.
Second, Joy.
Discussion?
Yeah, this is great that the different city departments and the developer and the applicant have worked together to make this happen, as well as the airport authority. And this is going to be an addition of more moderate cost homes, which is needed in this community, so I'm fully in support of this.
Any additional discussion? I think just to echo what my fellow commissioner said, it's always fantastic when applicants and the planning department and other partners, airport authority, can work together and have all of the details worked out and to create better solutions for homeowners. So, all right, Shelley, can you call the vote, please?
Campbell,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Joy,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Approved 7-0. Okay, next item, item 4.2, special permit 24024 for Last Enchantment Heliport, to allow for a heliport with associated waivers on property generally located at 801 Crest Hill Lane, and this is final action. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on this application?
No.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting any of this site to be disclosed?
No.
Good afternoon, George Wesselhoff, Planning Department, 555 South 10th Street. This is a request for a heliport under Article 13 of the special permit chapter of the county regulations. Where we're at, we're south of Davie Road, west of Northridge Lane, this location here at the end of Crest Hill Lane in Northridge subdivision. The applicant provided supplemental information noting that the property was approved by the State of Nebraska Department of Aeronautics as well as the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration, in 1985 as a personal use heliport, as well as for unrestricted use for emergency landings by either the general public or the State of Nebraska National Guard. What brought this forth today was a complaint received by the Building and Safety Department. And upon investigation, the applicant was advised that a special permit was required. Even though he had his other governmental agency approvals, it was discovered that a special permit was not obtained, which under the 1979 Lancaster County zoning regulations, the same requirement existed at the time as it does today. And so he should have applied for a special permit in the 1980s for this proposed heliport, or the heliport that exists today. The planned use of the heliport is for one helicopter, a Bell OH-58A helicopter for personal use. The landing zone shown on the site plan is kind of in the north half of this lot, which this lot is located north of the applicant's residence, which is to the south. There's only one existing building on this north lot, which is a accessory building in the southwest corner of the property. The landing area for the helicopter is in the north part. There will be no commercial operations. The applicant noted that the maximum number of takeoffs and landings will not exceed 3 per week. He did provide supplemental documentation from the FAA as far as noise levels for the helicopter. The helicopter is 1971 era or 1971 date, and there was FAA documentation provided from 1976 on noise levels of various helicopters, the one in question being comparable to the data in the FAA documentation. Basically, it was noted that the decibel range, the noise range, would be in the 70 to 80 decibel range, and that would be based on a distance of 150 meters or approximately 492 feet, and then another threshold of 75 meters, which is approximately 246 feet. The health department did review this supplemental information. Now, there's no noise ordinance that applies at this location. However, they did look at the City of Lincoln Noise Control Ordinance as a measuring stick, if you will, and they determined that it is unlikely that the noise from this helicopter would exceed the ordinance's noise thresholds for daytime hours in agricultural zoning, which that threshold is 75 decibels over a 10-minute average. This is assuming the applicant's assessment of the helicopter's noise levels and at-load duration during takeoff and landing is accurate. There was one waiver requested, and that waiver was from the drainage and grading plan requirements, which is one of the requirements under this special permit. The Lancaster County engineer agrees that the drainage and grading plan can be waived. There will be no change to the drainage and grading because there's no new concrete or impervious surface proposed with this proposal. Another agency that reviewed is the Airport Authority. While they have no jurisdiction outside of the Lincoln Airport, they did review from a general aviation standpoint, and they noted no issue with the heliport being operated as described in the 1985 document. So subject to the conditions of approval, the proposed special permit for the heliport meets Lancaster County zoning regulations. And I'll just show this picture here. The applicant did provide a picture of the helicopter that is in use and proposed as part of this special permit. And with that, I can answer any questions you may have.
Any questions at this time? All right, thanks, George.
Thank you.
All right, testimony from the applicant.
Good afternoon. My name is Richard Greb, address 801 Cresthill Lane, Davie, Nebraska. I want to thank Planning Commission and especially Mr. Wesselhoff and staff for all their hard work on this request for the special use permit. He hit on everything pretty well as far as I've lived on the property with my wife Nancy since 1979. We built an agricultural building back then. I think the regulations were a little bit looser. I had always operated a helicopter out of there since the mid-'80s with no issues whatsoever, no complaints or anything. So I guess it's on me that I did not get the permit back in 1985 when I put the building up. But I don't know if staff has been, or the Planning Commission has been privy to the most recent public comments that came in from the adjacent property owners. So I guess I would just say the first thing is the noise level, I think, is probably the biggest determining factor. Safety, it would be the first, noise would be number two. And the neighbor immediately to the east, who is most directly affected by any noise, has commented about approval of that. He has no reservations about it. He has never had an issue with us. The people to the north had written in no issues. We're directly to the south of the property. And then our neighbors to the west, who own 60 acres, that's where my departure and arrival paths are. And I think they've already marked their approval of no issues with us, and they may be speaking today. I don't know for sure. I don't want to speak for them. So the safety concern is taken care of because there's no homes that we depart or come back into our property on. And so the next thing would be the noise levels. And like I said, the people immediately adjacent to our properties, they do not have any problems with it and have already gone on record saying that. So I guess I would just ask for approval to continue operating like we have been for the last 30-some years. And hopefully we'll continue to be good stewards in the neighborhood and around the areas. And I guess the last thing I'd like to say is National Guard does do extensive operations out there. They do nap of the earth maneuvers, which sometimes they're 100 feet over the surface of the landscape out there. If they ever have a problem, they're fully authorized to use our property to land on in a case of emergency, or the general public. So again, I'd like to thank the Planning Commission staff for all their hard work, and if there's any question, I'll be glad to try to answer those.
Yes, Dick.
Yes.
Two questions. One is, how do you move that in and out of the building?
It has ground handling wheels with a John Deere tractor, so you just basically hook a rope on it, put it on the wheels, and pull it wherever you need to pull it.
Got it. Mm-hmm. And secondly, just out of curiosity, what do you do with it?
Just recreational. I've offered my services to the state of Nebraska State Patrol in the past. They have their own helicopter, so if it ever comes about that maybe have somebody wanders off from a memory care unit or something, which has happened out north of us, they didn't need us at that time because they were able to locate the individual out in the field. So I've offered services to do that at no charge. So
Great.
Other than that, we just, we go camping in it sometimes. So it's pretty just personal use. And to be honest with you, in the 3 times per week is probably excessive, because I do maintain a hangar in Wahoo also for fuel, depending on if I need to get fuel or if I'm low on fuel. So most of the time it's in Wahoo. The only time I'd like to have it at our home is like if we're going to leave to go on a flying breakfast or something, instead of having to drive to Wahoo to check it over, pull it out, and save some time.
Thank you. It's just personal interest.
No problem. No problem at all.
Mention the Air National Guard, I believe.
Yes.
That they could land there in a case of emergency.
Yes.
But are they in that area because of your heliport, or they just happen to be there and you've offered your place to land?
For some reason, they seem to operate between the Lincoln Airport and Wahoo, and that's where I keep it. So they're
So they would be there anyways, with or without your heliport?
Yes, they would be. Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other questions?
No questions? I just was going to offer, you had asked if we had seen things that come in, and just to clarify for people that when public comment is submitted, we receive emails daily with copies of anything that was submitted, as well as it's all available online or in the planning department office. So
Okay.
even if something comes in right before a meeting, we usually get then a paper copy. But
Okay.
we do have opportunities to see all of those.
Okay. Good, 'cause I know some folks had asked why their comments had been posted, and it didn't show up on the portal. Or it was in a Acrobat Reader format that you had to pay a subscription to open it up. So I just forwarded, like you said, the emails I received directly from staff. Okay.
All right.
Great. Well, thank you.
All right, thank you. At this time, we will hear testimony in support of this application. If there's one here. Go ahead and come forward.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Julie Parham, and along with my husband, Randy Parham, and our 2 children, we reside at 17301 Northridge Lane, Davie, and we're part of the Northridge Neighborhood Homeowners Association. My husband, Randy Parham, is here also, and he submitted a public record comment on behalf of us in support of the application. We have lived at our residence with our 2 children for the past 8 years. And our residential property shares a property line with the Greb property to the south. So we do share a property line with them to the south of their property. I currently work for Marriott Hotels International. My employer is based out of Washington, D.C., where I previously worked for 25 years. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because when we moved our family back to Nebraska 10 years ago, and then settled in our home 8 years ago, my job became full-time remote work. So Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m., 5 p.m., I am in my home office working. And in these past 8 years, I have never found it to be disruptive to my work environment, certainly. And then additionally, just to our personal enjoyment of our residents and our acreage. So I think at the most, I've maybe heard the helicopter 1 or 2 times, and it's just really been a non-issue. So additionally, for the past 6 years, I have been the secretary and treasurer for the Northridge Neighborhood Association. So as both a homeowner and a board member, I've attended every meeting. 6 years as a board member, but 8 years living there in the community. And there's never been an issue of any type brought forward to the Homeowners Association in that time regarding the helicopter landing pad or concerns from anyone. So personally, from the Parhams, we are in support of the application. There has been no impact to our enjoyment of our residents or to my work environment, which is very important to me. And we have no safety concerns. We enjoy where we live and have experienced no negative impacts. Okay.
Any questions? Okay, no, thanks.
Okay.
Additional testimony and support?
Hello, my name is Stephanie Thompson, and our address is 641 Davie Road, Davie, Nebraska. And our property is adjacent to the Grebs to the west, and we are in support of this application, and we too have had absolutely no problems with this and have only heard it a couple of times, and so we're in support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other testimony and support? All right, is there anyone here who wishes to testify in a neutral capacity? And then anyone here who wishes to testify in opposition to this application?
We are Chuck and Krista Colas. We live in the middle of the Northridge Association development there.
Your address?
Oh, we're Chuck and Krista. Our address is 17700 Northridge Lane at Davie. And we are here to protest the special permit application to allow this helicopter to be stored, land, and take off from our residential neighborhood. Many people move to the country for peace and quiet. As many as maybe you have. We've never expected to have to deal with a helicopter heliport being placed in a residential neighborhood. And we are sharing our concerns with those who have received the notification in the surrounding area around us of the special permit requested for the helipad at 801 Crest Hill Lane. Some residents have commented, why should one person's desire for convenience by operating a helicopter in a residential area trump everyone else's concerns around about peace and quiet? And the peace and quiet is only one issue. I was going to say nobody, but now I can't say that word. I'll say most people don't want to live near someone who has a helicopter in his yard. Well, several of us in the notified area are working to oppose Mr. Greb's attempt for this special permit for the heliport. Everyone within a mile radius was notified of this special meeting. And we started to reach out to some of those in the area who were notified, and we were surprised to learn that those concerned citizens were already discussing this permit. They've had other issues that they've had to deal with in northern Lancaster County. They've had to fight off things like a drag strip, a camping area, Ash Grove cement plant that they wanted to mine dirt, hog confinements. Those are just some of the areas. So people, when they see these special permits and zoning actions, were very alert, and they were already discussing this, and they were more than happy to sign the petition to object to the passing of this. So some of the other concerns, besides building the heliport in the residential area, we have 14 homes on 80 acres. Concerns about the environmental impact on property values. So it's not just a noise issue. Some residents think investing in a home, regarding property values, we called some Lincoln appraisers, and they had no properties to compare and do an analysis of this. But they found research in Minnesota in a residential area that decreased people's property values by 20 to 30%. And that's an attention grabber. Nobody here has probably even considered that. So some residents say that investing in a home is also investing in their neighborhood. And part of buying a home is researching the zoning ordinances and seeing what could potentially be put in the area. What will affect potential buyers and sellers. It's a big investment to buy and build a home in an area, and this isn't what we're invested in. So besides the noise issues, people are concerned about the current flight pattern of airport traffic descending into the Lincoln Airport. And he would need to be flying his helicopter extremely low over these acreages and farms. And we have heard complaints from a lot of people that we're spoken to as he's hovered above homes around their areas, and it's a creepy invasion of their privacy. Some farmers said the helicopter has scared their cattle and horses and llamas. I mean, the National Guard does come through, but they are further east of us. And so if they are spooking farm animals, horses step in a hole, break a leg, cows, llamas are easily spooked, or run an animal through a fence because they are flying low. So there was probably 3 or 4 that expressed their concern about their horses and cattle and llamas. Also, the space required for the heliport and consideration for the existing buildings, windbreaks. Since he applied for this permit in '79, trees have shot way up. There's trees 70, 80, even 150 feet tall in our commons area. And the fueling of the helicopter was probably already addressed, and people were concerned about maybe aviation fuel being stored on the property and existing wells in the area if there was a spill.
That's 5 minutes, sir.
Well,
Did he have my 5 minutes?
she lost her voice, and that's
My voice.
Well, can you wrap it up? Are you close? Usually we don't say one person can give another person their time, so
I
I,
can try to talk if you don't mind listening to my raspy voice.
yeah.
I think my name is Krista Colas. Chuck is my husband. He
Use
is the
the-
Northridge.
You need to stand
mic.
by one of the mics.
Then we'll be able to hear you
He
better.
is the Northridge Association president. He spoke of the people that we visited with just since the notices went out. We have 42 signatures of some of the landowners that were notified of
within a
this,
mile of this.
that are
heliport.
protesting this application. Some of them are farmers, some of them are just neighbors. But most everybody's comment was, why should one person's convenience take over everybody else's rights to live in the country? One thing I will say is that many of you remember when Brooke Beringer died in the plane crash. That happened 2 miles from our house. Evidently what happened was the gas wasn't turned on or something to the plane, but my point is, he didn't plan on dying that day. And I'm sure Richard would never plan on having an accident, but it could happen. And what does a helicopter do when it fails? It plops straight down. So that is a concern that we've had. The other thing I might point out is that Richard was notified back in 1985 that he needed this special permit. He declined to even look into it until June of this year. And why is that? Was he afraid of the pushback that the neighbors would be making? Just to let you know, on this map of our neighborhood, you can see this is the property where the helicopter is, right there, it's in blue. Chuck, we are this property right here. So we are not far from that. We hear the noise. We hear it above when they take off. It's not just when they're taking off, but it's when they fly away. We hear the noise. Most people that have commented have said they don't mind the noise. Well, that's kind of a second thing for us, for the property values, the safety, that we have talked to other people about. And even back, I said that he tried to, or ignored applying in 1985. On April 17th, he got a letter or an email from the Lancaster County zoning regulations that said he needed to apply for this permit. Again, he waited until June of this year to do that. And one of the comments that he made on those notes back and forth was, I'd hate to lose the convenience I've had for 30 plus years of flying from my home. Again, why should one person's convenience, trump everybody else's rights? I don't know about you all, I don't know where you live, but if you lived in an acreage where you had enjoyed peace and quiet, would you like to have a helicopter taking off and landing in your neighborhood? And what's going to happen when someone goes to sell their property? I mean, are people going to be examining the what kind of zoning actions have taken place in that area? Is that going to affect people's willingness to put forth the money that a lot of those homes are worth? So that it's just something to consider. So those are, like I said, we saw the people that were commenting, and almost all of them have said the noise. The noise, I guess I can deal with. We have a neighbor that has a loud car, and it just is what it is. But the other facts, especially the residential property value, I just don't think, again, that that's fair. So we do have a video of the helicopter taking off, and I must say,
One more minute.
This video was taken after he denied that the helicopter was there. He wrote the planning commissioner back and said, the helicopter's not here, so that's a moot point. And you're going to see how close he gets to the tall trees there. And this was taken from Crest Hill Lane.
Very interesting. The helicopter supposedly, the helicopter pad is never used. Yet, there he went.
So I think the planning commission has been very patient with him, allowing him to not apply for these permits. I'm not quite sure why it's gone on this long, because it was required back in 1985.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, we have some questions.
How long have you lived at your property?
We've lived there.
We've been there since about the same time that the Grebs moved in, April of 1979.
Okay.
So a long time. We've raised 3 children there. And I will say one more thing. Up until the time when Kobe Bryant was killed in the helicopter crash in California, I guess I didn't think another thing about a helicopter being in our neighborhood. And then I thought to myself, if that can happen to somebody like Kobe Bryant, it could happen to anybody. So that's when I started looking into the permits that were required and found out all that information.
All right.
So-
Any additional questions? Yeah.
Approximately how many times per week does a helicopter take off or land?
You know, I can't
We would have to be
say for sure, because we're not
outside.
always home.
I have very good
either.
hearing. I can hear a helicopter come from a mile and a half away, especially those National Guard ones.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
But you can almost hear the vibration or feel the vibration as well. And again, that's not my major concern. My major concern is property value and safety.
And it did cause an upheaval with people within the mile. I mean, we got.
I mean, when you have 42 people that agree with you, that live within that notification area,
38 property owners.
that will sign a permit, a petition that says we oppose this. You know, obviously people work. Almost everybody we encountered said, I'd love to be there, but I have to work. And we didn't want to encourage them to send emails because, you know, they were agreeing pretty much, and some of them came up with things on their own. But they were concerned about the same things we were.
So are you submitting that?
Names.
That,
Yes, we do have
Would
the
you
names.
like the names?
yeah, for the, if that is your intent, is for
Yeah,
that to
that's
be
fine.
included in the record, then you'll give that to Shelley and she will.
Okay.
These are the original copies. There's like 6, 7 pages of them.
And they have addresses on there
The
and-
addresses,
and their
names,
signatures.
No phone numbers, but
Thank you.
And you have to understand that we didn't have a lot of time to do this because we just got the notification with those 40-plus people that were
we had a
notified.
big storm in the area and people are doing a lot of cleanup and they're
So-
busy with that. But, yeah, that took a few days out
And
of our.
several people thanked us for doing this. Several.
Most. I mean, I went an entire mile where absolutely everybody in the mile signed. And other groups east of 14th, the whole neighborhood signed. 14th and Davie, the banker, real estate agent, all 5 of them signed. They were all concerned.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much. There additional testimony in opposition?
Hello. My name is Mike Ketter, 17900 Northridge Lane. I oppose this. I want to make sure I thank Chuck and Krista for going around and finding all those opposed to this. Sounds like they had a nice talk with these people, and it was overwhelming. I opposed to the permit. Many of these concerns were brought up by them. Personally, I called a couple realtors for their opinions on what heliports do to property values. Neither one that I talked to had information, as these are rare in close neighborhoods and acreages. And to me, that it's kind of obvious why there isn't. On the safety issue, I looked into heliport insurance and found fatality rates had steadily increased the last 3 years, so the premiums have risen. 39% of the general helicopter accidents were caused by violations and 22% by pilot errors. Therefore, many insurance companies do not offer coverage policies anymore due to the lawsuits and deaths and excessive damages. Low-level accidents were noted on this, and our neighborhood has an abundance of tall trees. One last item is who will regulate abuses or compliance issues? We've kind of went around on this a couple times. Is it the police, FAA, Planning Commission? Who do we call? I can see this permit, if approved, being a precedent for additional sites in our areas or other areas. And with the drones becoming more popular, larger, I can see this as being a common issue throughout. So much for peace and quiet of owning an acreage. I just got handed this, so I'm just going to read it. The title is from a gal, the civil engineer who focuses on airports, titles, and she is an aviation technical expert. I'll just put it down, say it the way it is. Lots of BS in this application. His attachments contradict his application. Number one, Department of Aeronautics, now NDOT, does not approve private heliports. They simply register it. NDA's letter specifically says registration shall not be construed to mean Department of Aero approval. His application claims approval. Number two, I can find no FAA record of this heliport. FAA publishes both private use and public use. If FAA was not notified of construction within 18 months of FAA acknowledgement, then that acknowledgement expires. Number three, FAA's 1985 letter says the heliport would adversely affect safe and efficient use of aerospace unless certain conditions were met. Did he meet these conditions? Number four, LNK airport staff reviewed in 1985 and 86, but lots of things have changed since then. Why LNK wasn't contacted for a current review? Thank you.
Any questions? All right. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional testimony in opposition to this application? All right, staff questions. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm not in opposition, but I do want to say something. Is that okay? Or do you want me to wait?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. My name is Deborah Cronin. I live at 17...
Can you pull that a little closer to you, please?
The mic.
Yeah.
I'm Deborah Cronin. I live at 17600 North Ridge Lane at Davie. And we live right next door to the Colises. And they never came down and talked to us about any of this. And I'd like to know why they didn't approach us. We're a neighbor, and we live closer to the heliport than they do. Richard is an experienced pilot. He's taken classes. He's gone to Wichita and had to pass classes for pilot licenses. And we have ridden with him in his helicopter, but we can no longer ride with him because of the insurance. I would trust him over any pilot on an airplane or a jet. And as far as the noise goes, our lawnmowers run longer than the plane taking off. And when you live in the country, you just don't have a little push mower. You have a riding mower that makes noise. As far as the amount of issues as far as the flight, I think Richard has landed once this year. 6 months out of the year, they're not even here. They're in Arizona. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. You've already had your 5 minutes. So at this time, we will have staff questions. All right. People have questions for George. Yep, go ahead.
I'll ask the question that was asked. If they feel like there are issues and they are not following the promises that they set forth in this application, who do they call?
As I understand it, a special permit can be revoked. I don't want to speak as the county attorney, but generally speaking, I think that a special permit can be revoked if it's not meeting the criteria that.
So do they call the planning department or building and safety?
They would, if it's one of the special permit criteria, they could call planning, or building and safety would also be a recipient for complaints. And
George,
on-
you want to pull your mic up? a
Yeah,
little
I'm sorry.
The mic is there, thank you.
They could contact Building and Safety or Planning, and I would note, I would clarify that Building and Safety was contacted in 2020. That was the year that a complaint was received. We're not aware of a complaint prior to 2020 or any communications prior to 2020 with staff, Building and Safety, or Planning concerning any violations on the property.
Thank you, George.
George?
Yeah.
Does this special permit only for the applicant, or does it roll with the land?
It would run with the land.
Follow up to that. Does the special permit last only a certain number of years and he has to reapply?
No, it would last in perpetuity regardless of ownership.
Yes.
But with the special permit and the statements that he's made of flying maximum of 3 times a week, would that follow with the land also?
That is not a condition that's listed under the conditions of approval. That was his information provided with his application.
Okay, thank you.
George, can you speak to the comments that were made about the FAA? That was something you mentioned in your report.
Yes, Planning is not aware of any violations as far as FAA. I know when this was researched a few years ago when the complaint came in, mention of that was included, and I think Mr. Greb included documentation as well to that effect. But enforcement of FAA or Nebraska Department of Transportation would be through those agencies for their regulations.
Okay. Thank you.
Did you contact the FFA or the Nebraska Department of Transportation?
No, they were not included. The one aviation-related review agency was the Lincoln Airport Authority, but that was more just for general aviation review. They don't have jurisdiction in this case.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any additional questions for staff? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, now is the opportunity for applicant rebuttal.
I guess first, I'll go back to the last question about the FAA. That's all part of the staff report, I believe. I can reiterate it here, I suppose. This was the original Does this work here?
Yeah,
That just takes a second. There you go.
Is that upside down or?
Yeah.
Nope.
Okay, so that was, this was, if you notice on the date 1985, this was the original application. And then this should all be in the staff report, I believe. And this would be like from correspondence back from the Nebraska Department of Aeronautics. Everything's date stamped in the 80s. So that's all part of the application. So in the FAA, all their requirements are met. Here, again, here's the FAA that was submitted way back in 1985. So I think you'll find all that documentation that's date stamped back from 1985, 1986. That should answer that question.
It is just for everybody, it's not a part of the staff report, it's a part of the application, but it
Right.
is online and
Right, it's on
available.
this.
Okay, that should be there. The other thing is, I think there was a comment made by the Colases about the flight elevation. The average elevation that a helicopter flies at is 500 feet. Upon takeoff, I would say by the time we hit the west side of the Thompson's property, which is my flight path, I'm probably 400 to 500 feet. So that's just the maximum height I usually go anyway. That's just basically watch for towers, and that's the standard. No less than 500 feet. Coming in, by the time I reach their property on the west side, probably 500 feet, and then it slowly decreases into the property. So Yeah, there's eventually I get down to elevation of the surface, but there's no cattle on their property. There's no it's hay at this point. So there's no issues with that. I guess the other thing about this is the first I heard about the signatures that they received. I thought there was a process that people could get into the portal and put any comments in. So I guess the first thing I'd need to verify if these people actually did, if the verified signatures or whatever happened, because anything could be possible there. But I would have hoped that they would have put in through the portal if they had any problems, and I could address those issues that they have. That being said, I don't know how to answer their questions, because I did not go out and specifically reach out to every person that was notified within a 1 mile radius.
All right, are there questions for the applicant at this time?
Okay, thank you.
I would move that we close the public hearing.
Second, Joy.
Campbell.
Yes.
Cruz.
Yes.
Edens.
Yes.
Fight.
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Rodenberg.
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Public hearing closed.
And I would move that we pass the conditional approval of special permit 24024.
Second, Joy.
Discussion?
Yeah. The reason that I am leaning towards supporting this, more than leaning towards supporting it, will support it, is the fact that this has been in place since 1986. And all of a sudden then the special permit came up as to be needed and so on. And the neighbors closest to this property are demonstrated support for his application versus others within that square mile around it. And the neighbors closest to it are going to have the most impact of noise. For my time in the Army in Vietnam, I flew in every helicopter we had over there. He's correct, 500 feet was generally where we stayed maximum. But a helicopter doesn't go straight up. It has to take off on a glide path, and the same with landing. And so that's always going to be present. And the helicopter noise decibels that have been submitted are not loud at all. So I will be supporting this approval.
It's kind of ironic that we just looked at a text amendment that showed the
Mhm.
path of the airport. So if you noticed our green path from the Lincoln Airport of what goes over this portion of the county, the actual air path where all of the flights are coming in from the north, according to the runway, comes off of First Street, which is, when you look at that, 14th Street, and then we have the development that we're looking at today, and then a half a mile is where the path, where the flights that we have from all of the airport authority. So it's interesting to me, and we do have, like you said, the decibel noise coming from those types of flights and things in the area. But from what we've been presented today, on behalf of the applicant and the support letters, I will be supporting this application.
Additional discussion?
I guess I would like to explain whether the vote goes for the applicant or for the opposition. And although this is final action, you do have the an appeal method with the Lancaster County Commission. You need to submit that appeal within 14 days, and then you can be reheard before another body.
I will I will say I am a little concerned, only because the special permit goes with the land. And even though our applicant has shown great responsibility with the helicopter and safety, you're not going to always guarantee that with the next person who lives there and owns that land. And so I'm very concerned about that. I did grow up actually next to a property that has a helicopter right there, and it is frustrating when they're very close to your property line. So I might be the only one not supporting this today.
Additional discussion? All right, I think we are ready to take a vote. Shelley?
Campbell.
Yes.
Cruz.
Yes.
Edens.
Yes.
Fife.
No.
Joy.
Yes.
Rodenberg.
No.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Approved 5-2.
Okay, at this time, anyone who wishes to speak on an item that was not on today's agenda may do so.
I would move that we adjourn.
Second, Joy.
Campbell.
Yes.
Cruz.
Yes.
Edens.
Yes.
Fife.
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Rodenberg.
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
We are adjourned.